All right, so we're up to 16 people. We're 3 minutes early, but I know a bunch of you have been sitting here for at least half an hour. Again, I apologize for miscommunication about the start time. Class was supposed to start at 10, or that was my intention, but if you showed up at 9, you were not wrong, because apparently I set the invite. I want to blame it on time zones or something, but no, I think I just messed up. I had it in my head that I was getting here at 9 to set up. So thank you for your patience if you've stuck around. The people who have to bail because they planned on the class starting at 9, again, this will be recorded. I will probably chop out the first 40 minutes of me twiddling my thumbs. But anyway, this will be recorded and this will be put online for your availability, assuming that I don't completely embarrass myself. So starting with some of the basics, easy things for people to miss, but that's okay. My name is Corey Moss. I have been building websites since the late 90s. So got in early. I've been doing it as a career and as a hobby. I love it. I enjoy tech. I enjoy building. It's part of why I was drawn to the Claremont Makerspace when looking at moving to New Hampshire. I had mostly lived in New York for the last 20, 30 years. And in fact, am just in the process of buying a house in Claremont. And so joined the Makerspace before the pandemic, started hanging out, trying to meet people. And then the pandemic happened. So haven't had a lot of time or opportunity to hang out here, but the folks here were nice enough to let me teach a class, which I love doing, sharing my knowledge, helping people out, hopefully. And eventually I look forward to meeting some of you in person. So yeah, I build websites big and small. I am not here to sell you anything. I don't have products to sell you. I've spent most of the latter part of my career focusing on WordPress, which is wordpress.org, which is WordPress as a piece of software that is awesome and amazing for building websites if you are not too technical. So we're going to go into that a bit later. There are definitely lots of alternatives to WordPress, and I'll mention some of them. At this point, like they say, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Well, since I love WordPress as much as I do, WordPress feels like the solution to most things. So take that part of my, my class with a grain of salt. We're using a product called Zoom here. There are a bunch of different features available to you while we're in this class. Specifically, there's chat. I'm not sure what your screen looks like, but there's a black bar at the bottom of mine. If you don't see it, move your cursor down to the bottom of the window where I'm talking. And you should see an option called chat. You can talk, you can select whether it goes to everybody or whether it just goes to me. Do whatever you want. You can also raise your hand. I see Sylvie has raised her hand. What I'm going to suggest instead of raising hands is there's also a Q&A option. And so I might ask for a raise of hands or a show of hands just to get a sense of where you guys are at technically, that kind of thing. I'll ask some questions, but if you want to ask me a question specifically, please use the Q&A panel and I'll do my best to get to them. The first question that I've got right now, Rachel asks, does WordPress have an e-commerce option? And yes, I will, it does. And I will cover that a little bit later. Without further ado. Okay, thanks. So without further ado, we're going to start with, again, real high level and some specific tech requirements and kind of go into the very basics of how websites actually work. And then what I'm going to try to do is, after introducing general concepts, speaking broadly, I'm going to try to give you specific examples and or tell you basically, if I was in your shoes, starting from the very beginning, wanting to set up a website, how I would go about it. Okay, and a couple of instances, I'm actually going to share my screen with you and show you, what I see, so that hopefully when I'm doing the various things that I'm doing, so that hopefully when you go to do it, it won't look so foreign, won't look so scary to you. So in starting out, most of us at this point kind of have a sense of what a web page is, or what the internet is, right? You open up this thing called a web browser, Safari, Firefox, Chrome, and there's a URL bar at the top, and you type in a URL. Somebody gave you a URL, or you go to a search engine like Google and you type in something. And so, that's kind of the level that most of us are interacting with the internet. And you may or may not have given thought to how to actually build your own, how to represent yourself online using web pages. But here we are in a makerspace, right? And so either you are a maker and you want a website to promote yourself, to sell your creative wares, to sell your writing, or just to advertise yourself, put up business hours, try to communicate with other people, whatever your intent may be. And so I think that's the first thing to start thinking about. Oh, well, the alternative is, as a maker, maybe you just want to start making websites. That's fine too. Come along for the ride, it's fun. But things to think about when you switch from consuming to creating, right? It's just like anything, you see some beautiful pottery and then switching gears to saying, I want to create pottery. There's some stuff that you want to think about. The first one, just like anything, is patience. And I think that a lot of people get put off by the technical aspect of this kind of thing, especially if you are the type of maker who is used to using your hands to create stuff. Very different than sitting in front of a computer. A computer, a lot of it very intentionally feels like a magic box, right? It's trying to just do everything for you. So there's a lot of sort of mystery behind where it comes from, or how things are working, which is of course very different than, to continue to use the pottery analogy, there's clay in the ground. I take clay out of the ground, I mold it into something and make some pots and put it in a kiln and fire it and et cetera, et cetera. But so I think the thing to start with is patience. Give yourself time. Don't expect it to go quick. The other challenging part, I think, is the difference between people who want to make a website and so they want to devote a lot of time to it, and then people who want to create a website quick and dirty as a marketing tool or as an e-commerce tool, to then get on with the other stuff that they find more important. That's totally fine. It can be frustrating, right? It's a very deep rabbit hole. And so you just want to give yourself time and have patience in how deep or how far you can travel with it, something like that. The next one is tech overwhelm. Definitely happens. I touched on that a second ago. Try not to get overwhelmed. Find other people who maybe you're trying to build their first websites too. Ask your friends and family. Get on Facebook. Go take a walk. The best thing I could recommend is, again, as you're chipping away at building your first website, give yourself time frames. Say, I'm going to work on this for an hour and then I'm going to shelve it until tomorrow. Because part of the problem, again, is in clicking through websites that already exist. They look beautiful, and on a computer, they make it very easy to browse a website. And so a lot of us have the impression that websites are quick and easy. And then of course, there's lots of software products out there like Squarespace and Wix and even WordPress that will try to convince you. I mean, their job is, because they're selling a product, is to try to make it sound like setting up a website is quick and easy. And it can be pretty quick to get set up online, but to make it do exactly what you want it to do takes time. So give yourself some time and be aware that most people get overwhelmed by tech. I've been doing this for 25 years. I still get overwhelmed by tech. A lot of it feels like magic. And then I just need to take a deep breath, back up, go read some articles, take a walk, and then come back and tackle it again. The third big thing that I would recommend is decide up front what you want to accomplish, right? So if you, as a maker, are really excited about the idea of building websites, this is a new thing, you've mastered pottery and you've mastered woodworking, you've mastered 3D printing, and so you said, okay, from here on out, I'm going to build websites. That looks like a fun hobby. Great. That's one path. I think probably why, actually, let me ask my first question here. So there is a way to raise your hands. I think if you go to participants, and then there's usually a little button at the bottom, I think, that says you can raise your hand. Cynthia just illustrated it for us. So if you would raise your hand if your intent is to promote yourself as a maker. If you are creative minded, there we go. Lots and lots of hands. Yeah. That's kind of what I expected. Thank you. Everybody. Everybody's raising their hand. Thank you. So now I'm going to lower all of your hands. There's a button that lets me, look at that. I have power to lower your hands. Okay, so the back to why you want to do this, right? So we've answered the question. Most of you are here to promote yourself as makers, which means you want to sell stuff online. That's probably most of you. You want to promote yourself online, either as a creative person or as a craftsman or as a contractor, what have you. And then also what is particularly timely is if you have something to say and you want to try to get the word out, you want to connect with other people, that kind of thing. We'll go into that a little bit too, okay? But I think the best place to start is to pick one thing. A lot of people also get into this and go, well, I want my website to do all these amazing things. Pick one thing. Pick with maybe just getting a website up that kind of introduces yourself. That's called a brochure site. And start with that. And then you can always add more stuff to it. But, kind of pick one thing, pick one mission, and then set off to do that. It's kind of like, again, if you wanted to learn something like pottery, you say, okay, I'm going to learn how to make a coffee mug, not I'm going to make a 50-piece China set. You got to start somewhere. So again, if you've got any questions as we're walking along here, there's a Q&A section. I do have that panel open that I'm keeping an eye on. So feel free to throw questions in there. I will address them or defer them, but don't be afraid to type something in and interrupt me. So starting at the very top level, what is the internet? The internet is basically a bunch of computers talking to each other. Just the same way that we now all walk around with phones and we all are text messaging each other or messaging each other. The internet is basically built on that concept. It is devices talking to each other, just like people talking to each other. The best visual way to picture it, you probably have seen this if you've watched CSI or any of these kind of classes or any of these kinds of shows. Is there's a room full of computers, floor to ceiling racks. These are called servers. They're just computers, okay? And their job is when I over here say, show me a web page, that server over there shows me the web page. They're just talking to each other. That's the internet. I mean, it feels magical. It is magical, but it's not conceptually. It's not much more complicated than that. Most people, when they think about a website, the first thing they think about is a domain, right? And a domain is also called a URL. It's that thing that you see at the top of your browser. So ClaremontMakerspace.com, Google.com, Facebook.com, what have you. Those are called domains. They are also called URLs, why there are all these jargony words, just to confuse you, just to make sure that I have job security. No, they in different contexts they do mean different things, but that's also the best place to start. Okay, so this is a domain is as you've experienced, but maybe haven't thought about. A domain is, the tagline is the thing that you're going to hand out, you're going to share, just the way people have shared it with you. They said, hey, you should go check out this cool website, blah, blah, blah.com. And coming from the perspective of representing yourself and selling your wares, this is where you want to start, right? This is what you're going to be handing out to people. So in particular, you want to spend a little time thinking about what domain you should buy. I recommend your name. It's always an easy place to start. Domains cost about between $8 and $20 a year, so $1 a month, but they're never billed monthly. They're always billed annually. And in a minute, I'll kind of walk you through what it's like to buy a domain. So yeah, what domains do I recommend buying? I recommend your name. Like the example I'm going to show you is I own CoreyMoss.com. That is my name. I only use it. I don't actually use it for most things, but I own it. And I recommend owning your own name just because one, in a real, in an off chance someday you want to use it, you can. And obviously it's the easiest thing to give people is your name. I highly, highly recommend always buying a .com and not including a domain. You can get a domain with dashes, but I don't recommend it. It just ends up being confusing. People trying to type, Claremont dash maker dash space, like it just gets confusing. So there's a reason why it's ClaremontMakerspace.com. If your name is taken, thankfully I have a pretty unique name, but if your name is John Smith, I promise you johnsmith.com is taken. You can include a middle initial. Some people, if they have an allegiance to, let's say, New Hampshire or Vermont, might do John Smith VT. It's kind of up to you. I tend to recommend using clear words or using something that's a sentence. If you're a maker, then say johnsmithmakes.com. If you're a potter, John Smith Pots, or Potter John Smith, or something like that. Again, so give a little thought to it. There's no harm in making mistakes. You can always buy additional domains. You can also swap out domains. You end up paying for them, but you don't have to renew them, right? So I've bought plenty of domains thinking that I was going to build a certain website and then didn't. And so then I just let it lapse. So I only paid $12 for the year and then didn't renew it. So just to recap real quick, a domain is, your calling card. I'm gonna throw out some really silly or cheesy analogies. Think of a domain like a vanity license plate, right? And we'll get into why there's more to that analogy in a minute. But basically, you get to choose how you're going to represent yourself in public. I recommend a .com. I recommend using your name, unless you are a business, then do that business name. But don't be too clever. Don't get too clever with spelling. There was a time when a lot of domains were dropping vowels and stuff because everything is taken. Just better to go long ClaremontMakerspace.com than to try to, CLR, MKR, SPC, because people, again, have to sit there and type these things in. Don't get too crazy. Great question. Candace says, do you have to register your domain name with the state of New Hampshire for doing business? No, you do not. Domain names have nothing to do with anything. Domain names are purely so that when somebody types in a name into a browser, they see a certain web page. There are times when I guess you don't want to misrepresent yourself. You don't want to buy a domain for a business that you don't own. Owning a domain for a certain amount of time does help you verify that you are a business entity. Not trying to go into these things, but I'm trying to brainstorm some of the ways in which domains matter more than just being, but it's kind of like you can technically register a business under any name and then put almost any name on the actual front of your store. You know, they are kind of independent things. Nancy says, from who do you buy a domain and who do we pay? Haha. Oh, I was supposed to click a button. Anyway, thank you. That was actually a plant in the audience because that was the next part of my class. So what I'm going to show you, I'm going to share my screen. We will see how this goes. I'm opening Chrome. Hopefully you can all see my screen at this point. I'm going to move this over here. And I want to see, give me just a second here, moving windows around. If I am keeping the Q&A open, I can't see the chat. So if you have a question for me, put it in the Q&A. But I'm hoping, boy, I really would like to see the chat so that I know that you are all, if you can't see my screen, put it in questions. But otherwise, I will just assume that you can see my screen. Okay, so how do you buy a domain? Most of you at this point, I would imagine, have bought something online. You've bought something from Amazon.com. It's the same thing. You're just not going to get anything shipped to you in the mail. Okay. There are businesses that exist all over the world called registrars, just like a wedding registrar or something else. Registrar, and registrars are, you know, legal business entities that where you can buy a domain. And then a lot of hosting companies, and hosting is a thing we're going to get into in a minute, but a lot of hosting companies are also registrars so that you can not only buy a domain from them, but also host with them. I actually recommend doing these things separately, just you don't want all of your eggs in one basket. We can go into that a little more in a minute. But anyway, let's finish this thread. So how and where do you buy a domain? I recommend Joker.com. It's not a common one, but I have been buying domains through Joker.com for 20 years, at least 15 years. They are a German company. They do not try to upsell you on anything. It is no bells, no frills. It just works. And I like that. I don't like that they try to sell me other crap I don't need. Other places that I also recommend, there's one called Hover. Hover Registrar. So hover.com is a good one. Let's see how much of a domain costs there. But okay, so actually backing up a minute, like I said, I recommend buying a .com. Technically, you can also buy domains that end in all of these things. So you can buy a .ca, a .co, .news, .online. It's not the end of the world if you buy one of these. You know, if you're I'm trying to think of, like, if you're a pottery collective, it might actually be fun to have a .us, because most people would read that as a .us. I recently built an online game. If you guys are familiar with the the Domino's game Mexican Train, I bought mexicantrain.online because everything Mexican Train was already taken. You know, don't be afraid of, don't be afraid of these other things. It's just .com is still kind of the most widely recognized. Cynthia says, my brother recommends Network Solutions, but to get my name there is over $1,200. So the other problem here is, I guess I'm specifically talking about buying new domains. Unfortunately, early on in the internet, people said, oh, if I buy querymoss.com, even though that's not me, and I sit on that domain, and pay the $12 a year. At some point, Corey Moss is going to come along, want to buy this, and then I can charge him whatever I want. And so, yes, unfortunately, sometimes you're going to, or a lot of the times you're going to run into domains are already taken. And you will even see that it'll say like, you know, this is for sale by a private party. And it's kind of up to you if you want to deal with it. I've bought a few domains from people. Sometimes they were nice about it. Sometimes they were jerks. Sometimes it was cheap. Sometimes it was not. Most of the time, I usually end up just going and finding something else. So if CoreyMoss.com was already taken, I might go buy CoreyOnTheWeb.com or CoreyBuildsWebsites.com and kind of thumb my nose at the people who are sitting there expecting me to pay money. Rachel says, can a domain be transferred from one hosting site to another? Absolutely. And that's one of the main reasons that I recommend buying a domain separately through a registrar. So let's get through the technical part of this, and then we'll loop or continue on to hosting. Okay, so Joker.com. I'm going to use these guys as an example. You see that I am not logged in. So again, just like Amazon, at some point you're going to have to create an account, but you would say, I want to buy a domain today. I'd hit search. It says, yep, it's available. Joker happens to already put things into your shopping cart. You can obviously remove them, but you might go down and you'd say, well, you know, maybe that's not what I actually want. I want to say buy a domain today.com. Nope, that one's already taken, but there's .net. Anyway, you see the point. It's just like shopping. You're thinking about it. You're picking the one you want. Once you find the one you want, let's say a .com, I click on it. It's now in my cart. I'd say check out. Do I want to buy .online? So I lied. Now they are doing a little upsells, but I'm okay with that. No, I don't want to add the .online domain for free. I'd say check out. So this is 12 euro. So this ends up being like $13 or something. This is where they'd ask you to create an account. For me, I've already got an account. You're going to see all the, once we click through, you'll end up seeing all the different domains that I own for different projects, different businesses, what have you. You'd probably end up creating a new account. Oh, there was a little tab there to do that. Go back to checkout. Oh yeah, $13.60 US. Brenna asks, who actually owns the website on a registrar or hosting site? You do. So through a registrar, you own whatever .com. You own the domain. Or I guess technically you are the registered owner of that domain. You can sell it to other people can sell them to you, you know, they're transferable. But I still like the analogy of a vanity license plate where, you know, you go to the DMV, they can technically take it away from you. You know, you can technically transfer it to your kids or your neighbors if you want to, but you are registering it with them. And so you are the registered owner of that vanity license plate. So you are the owner of that domain. And to that point, here's where you've got to create a contact. So this is, you know, you registering as the owner because they don't know who you are. So you end up putting in a name and address. I've already got a contact created and saved, so I don't really have to fill all this out, but you will. For the sake of privacy, this gets a little questionable. If I go and look up a domain name, let's see. I want to say it's whois.net, I think is where you look up whois. Look up. So if I type in CoreyMoss.com, let's see what info it shows. So this is you see that I registered it through Joker.com. but it does not show my name and address. Hey, awesome. But the information, you know, I guess it's just like, what would be an analogy? So not a license plate, right? But, you know, this is the information that is out there about who owns a domain. So Allison asks very specifically, what is a contact handle? Well, these are just nerd words for, you know, who is it that owns the domain? Yeah, Rachel asked the same question. So a contact handle is, again, remember that this website is one, built by nerds, and two, is German. So a contact handle, it might be called other things depending on the registrar, but basically there's going to be some screen where basically they say who owns this website. And it can be a business entity, it can be a human being. You know, I put in a PO address because in some instances people can find the name and address of who owns this. Between you and me, technically there's no verification, there's no validation of this information. So you could put in 123 Main Street, you could put in you could put in the address for the makerspace. Allison says, but the handle is numbers and letters. Oh, sorry. So in this case, it's just generated, right? So when, and I think this might even be specific to Joker. So when I first registered a website, I entered in all of my information. They save it using a code so that I can then go look it up again. And I think that these can be shared between registrars for validation of who you are. But that's not a code that you need to worry about. What you need to worry about is putting in your information down here and clicking proceed. And again, this will look a little bit different. I want to give you some examples, some context of what this looks like. We are getting a little more technical here. Don't panic, take a deep breath. Again, this is going to be recorded. You can ask lots of questions here and afterwards. But let's just kind of get through it, okay? So what is a domain name service, a DNS, right? Okay, so associated with a domain behind the scenes is what's called a DNS, domain name service. A service is a piece of software that sits on a computer in a dark closet run by nerds. But what it does is the best way I like to think about this is, the DMV analogy kind of applies, right? So if a cop looks up your vanity plate, they can find you, right? And if another good analogy is, is vanity phone numbers, right? 1-800-Flowers, 1-800-PET-MEDS. But there's an actual phone number behind that, right? So a domain name service acts like that, where basically it translates your domain into the phone number, which is in internet speak is called an IP address. But you can think of it like a phone number so that it actually knows what computer to go to see your website. I know I just threw a bunch at you. I'm going to go through it all again. But that's kind of the end-to-end of all of this. But let me get through buying a domain, and then we can revisit all that stuff, because I'm actually going to show you how all of this would be set up. So wherever you buy a registrar, or excuse me, whatever registrar where you buy a domain, they're going to offer you their own domain service. It's always free. So just let them, just say yes. Just say yes. So you checked your domain information. Yep, this all looks good. Proceed. No, obviously I'm not actually going to buy this, but I just kind of wanted to show you what it would look like. So this is where you then put in a credit card number and you'd say proceed, okay? So this is where, so once you own a domain, you're always going to go back to the same registrar where you bought it to manage it. unless you transfer it to another registrar, which is a possibility, but we're not gonna get into that right now, okay? So if I happen to buy a name, whatever I wrote, you know, if I buy this domain through joker.com to manage it, to renew it, to cancel it, I'm always going to come back to joker.com. And to manage the DNS, the domain name service that I just told you about. Okay, so now I'm actually going to go into the dashboard. So again, I'm signed in, right? And so here are a list of all of the domains that I have bought. I've bought them through Joker, so they are visible when I sign into Joker. So well, sorry. And obviously when you purchase, they send you an email, you get a confirmation, you know, an email that says, congratulations, you own, you know, CoreyMoss.com. But that kind of doesn't mean anything. It's just kind of like, you know, when you place an order with Amazon, they say, yep, your order has been placed. Okay. But to see your order pending and that kind of thing, you sign back into Amazon. So here I'm signing back into Joker. And here's a whole list of all the domains I own. Apparently at the moment I own 18. You may laugh at me. That's actually down from about 25. A lot of us, get giggly on a Friday night after drinking a glass of wine, and suddenly funny domains seem like good ideas. And then the next day we wake up and realize that we spent yet another $12 on a domain we'll never use. Be careful, it's addicting. Okay, so we're gonna basically pretend that I just bought CoreyMoss.com, okay? If you go to CoreyMoss.com, nothing happens, right? There's no website there because all you did was buy a vanity plate. You haven't actually put it on a car yet. Terrible analogy. But it's, you know, it's just, you just own it. It's not, I think the other way to think about it would be, yeah, like if you bought a vanity telephone number, but you haven't actually signed up for phone service yet. Right? So if somebody calls that number, the number you've dialed has been disconnected or whatever. Okay, you just own a name in space. There's nothing you can touch. You are an entry in a database somewhere on the internet. Very ethereal. So what you then need to do is sign up for something called hosting. Now, hosting, web hosting, is basically, I talked about all of those computers in a closet somewhere that are called servers, right? Hosting is basically, you have just bought space on, excuse me, you have bought space on one of those computers. And from a technical perspective, that space is assigned an IP address, a phone number, right? So back in the day when we all had, well, I guess we all walk around with our phones now. So it's like each person has a phone. But back in the day, every home would have a phone, right? I was born in the 70s. I'm dating myself. But, you know, every home on the block would have a phone. And so this is kind of, you think about hosting as, you know, your home on the web. It's where your website lives. And in order for people to reach you, you need a phone number. And that phone number is what's called an IP address. I don't even remember what IP stands for. I'm a terrible nerd. But anyway, and then putting this all together, you know, you bought a vanity phone number, you bought 1-800-Flowers or whatever, you need that to then connect to the phone number that you have at your house to then connect to you in your house. I hope that analogy that works. But that's kind of the whole thing. The idea is somebody goes to a web browser, goes to Chrome, types in CoreyMoss.com. CoreyMoss.com gets sent to that thing that I mentioned a minute ago, a DNS, a domain name server, a domain name service. The domain name service looks up and says, CoreyMoss.com points to such and such of an IP address. It's a phone number. I'll show you in a minute what it looks like. It's a bunch of numbers. In fact, the IP address for me is 167.99.13.58. Snooze, right? You don't want people to have to type that in. You want people to have to type in CoreyMoss.com. So CoreyMoss.com, the DNS at Joker looks up the IP address. It's known that the IP address points to a certain amount of space on a server in a closet somewhere, and then my website comes up. Ta-da! You now know everything about how websites work. Just kidding. Oh, somebody looked it up for me. Thank you, Colleen. IP address stands for Internet Protocol. There, you can all drop that at your next cocktail party. Oh, I was chatting with Internet Protocols the other day, and then everybody will go, ooh. Okay. But yes, start to finish, type in a domain. Domain gets looked up to see what the IP address is. The IP address routes to space on a server, and then whatever is on that server gets shown, okay? Let me get back on track with my notes here. Okay, so that's the idea of buying a domain and then what we're gonna do with the domain. Okay, so hosting. You need some space on a server, right? So this is the space where your website will live. The other terrible analogy that I wrote down. It's like if you have a computer at home and you've set up different users on that computer, like if you've got a son or a daughter and they have their own account, or if you share it with a spouse or a partner. And basically, they don't want to see your bookmarks. You don't want to see what they bought you for Christmas. You might set up different users. That's the way to think of a server. A server is a computer, lots of different users on it. They're all kind of siloed. They've each got their own space for their own websites. A terrible analogy, way too technical, but hopefully that helps somebody. So again, hosting is just something that you buy online. You go to a company like, let's see, I wrote down a few of them that I like. Let's go to bluehost.com. Now, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of hosting companies. Sorry, one more thing. Another great place to buy a domain, Google now offers their own, offers a registrar service. So Google domains, joker.com, hover.com are the three places that I recommend buying a domain. I just walked you through buying a domain at joker.com, and you'll still see we're still going to do some stuff with them in a minute. And then, I jumped ahead. Sorry, one more thing. Email, right? So when somebody types in your domain in a browser, CoreyMoss.com, that's one thing. But if you Corey at CoreyMoss is an email address, but you realize that, that's the same domain. So these are sort of different ways that domains can be used. And one of the things that I actually just learned about is most registrars offer this thing called email forwarding, which basically lets you forward an email address to an existing email address, right? And so again, this is a way to think of that vanity phone number that forwards to a regular phone number. I actually like, for almost all domains that I set up, I go and I register a Gmail account. So I have CoreyMoss@gmail.com. I have, like I mentioned a minute ago, I built a website called mexicantrain.online. I have mexicantrainonline@gmail.com. And I use them. It's free, it's easy. I don't have to worry about it. And like I said, domains can be sold. In theory, you can forget to renew, or if a credit card doesn't go through, technically after 30 days you can lose a domain, but I will never lose a Gmail account. Question from Allison: Bluehost, Google, Hover, these are servers, but I missed part of the names. Can you repeat them? Absolutely. So in particular, what I've mentioned so far are registrars, otherwise known as places where you buy a domain. One of them is, let's actually do this, mytextarea.com. Yes, good place to type. Joker.com, Joker.com. Let's do this. Registrars. Joker.com, hover.com, or Google domains. So Google Domains is domains.google. Domains.google. So these are places to buy domains. Beth wrote a word, but I don't understand it. So you'll, Beth, if you could give me more details, I'd appreciate it. So these are the places where you might buy a domain. And then the three, and again, there are thousands. These happen to be a few that I like. Hosting companies. They're cheap. They're generally reliable. Oh, Beth recommends Ionos. I don't know that one. IONOS.com. Let's go see what they're all about. Yep, so we're looking at Ionos. So they sell domains. They also offer hosting. And then another one, popular one is oneandone.com. That forwards to Ionos. I didn't know they changed their name, probably because in my world they have a terrible reputation, but your mileage may vary, as they say online. Hosting companies that I recommend. Sorry, that might have come out snarkier than I meant. I didn't mean it that way. I've not had a good experience with them. I hope you've had a good experience with them. And again, there are thousands to choose from. Bluehost.com is one I like. Siteground.com is one I like. And Get Flywheel. And these Flywheel. These hosts tend to focus more on WordPress hosting, which, as I mentioned earlier, is the software that I specialize in. So again, if I'm a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So my personal perspective is going to be through the lens of most things WordPress, but they all do still offer just regular website hosting. Beth, I'm going to skip your question about about the bad experiences that I've had. We can always talk about it afterwards. Deidre asks, can you move a domain to a different registrar? Oops, I'm supposed to click a button. Can you move a domain to a different registrar? I have registered with GoDaddy years ago, but I'm not like their aggressive upselling nature. There's another sometimes bad experience. GoDaddy has become a lot better, but yes, a lot of people are not fans. You absolutely can move a domain from one registrar to another. They all technically access the same big database in the sky. They are just basically licensed resellers. I recently moved a domain from GoDaddy over to Joker because I found GoDaddy difficult to work with. And so now the domain is moved to my account. It's a little technical. You just have to sort of, read up and walk through it, but you absolutely can. Rachel asks, how long will this webinar last? This webinar will last, honestly, as long as I keep talking. I figured it would be more than an hour, just because there's a lot to cover. It is all being recorded, so if you've got to jump off, feel free to. You can always come back and watch later. Brenna asks, what is WordPress? Great question. I will cover it a lot later in this class. Okay, so getting back to hosting, let's use Bluehost as an example. I'm not going to actually buy hosting here, but just some of the things that we want to look out for. Oh, I touched on earlier. I highly recommend, and some of these questions are exactly the reason why I alluded to earlier, buying a domain at a registrar separate from buying hosting at a different company. And they don't necessarily have to be different companies, but I like that separation of ownership, right? Specifically because people are already talking about, can you move a registrar, or excuse me, can you move a domain from one registrar to another because I don't like the registrar I'm with. If you buy a domain and buy hosting all with the same company, right, all of your eggs are in one basket. And so it just becomes technically more difficult to kind of untangle. Whereas if I own all of my domains at Joker and I point my domain at Bluehost, and then I decide I don't like Bluehost, I can very easily now point my domain at SiteGround or some other hosting company. And I'm not also trying to move my domain. I'm just pointing it from one place to another. I hope that makes sense. Mary asks, doesn't WordPress have hosting capabilities? Why wouldn't you use them? Yes, they do. And that's one of the things that's very confusing in the WordPress world. WordPress.com is a hosting service for WordPress websites. And then WordPress.org is the software that runs those websites. And so you can run WordPress on WordPress.com, or you can run WordPress on any other hosting site as well. Again, I personally don't care for WordPress.com. They're a little more expensive, and they are much more geared towards big companies. And so I think for most people who are just starting out, they're not the best option, because you're paying for a lot of things or you're paying more than I think you need to for hosting a basic website. You certainly can host with them. So what is a hosting company? A hosting company is basically the nerds who maintain those racks of servers, all of those computers in a closet somewhere, and then rent you blocks of space, right? And basically, and that's where you put your website. Okay, so let's use Bluehost as an example. Shared hosting. Excuse me. Again, this is where you get a little bit of space on a server shared with a bunch of other people. You don't know how many, you don't know who's there. That's fine. Most of them offer all sorts of different plans, things that you want to consider, or things that they will try to differentiate themselves on. Price. You don't necessarily want to go with the cheapest ones. There are registrars out there. Excuse me. Whew. There are hosting companies out there that offer plans, starting at $1 a month. Bluehost here offers starting at $4 a month. The more generally you do in fact get what you pay for. Okay, up to don't pay thousands, but to get started, I usually recommend plan to pay, in this case, since it's $6 a month, that's less than Netflix. Buy that middle tier. They usually come with some of the other things that we're going to talk about: disk space, bandwidth, that kind of thing. But generally, the more you pay, the more a hosting company likes you, let's be honest. And so the more power they give you, and the more preference they give you, and a little bit better support that they give you, that kind of thing. Those are very soft answers to what is, they are very technical in that it's not supposed to be true, or it's not, basically, by paying a little bit more, the amount of space you get on that shared server is a little bit bigger, but also the amount of, like you've probably walked into a computer store and they start talking about, the size of the hard drive. These days we talk about gigabytes of space, right? but also, RAM and that kind of thing. And again, generally the more you pay for, the more you get. A lot of hosting companies now offer this kind of thing where they say unlimited, unlimited, unlimited. Nobody technically can offer things that are unlimited, let's be honest. So it's kind of like how, Sprint offers you unlimited data, but you might or might not know that they actually will throttle you, right? So after you use some certain amount of space, they actually will slow down how fast you get your data. So technically you have unlimited data, but if you can only get a meg a minute, there's only so many minutes. So technically there is a limit, right? I'm just kind of rambling here. Let me get back on track. Bluehost, let's look at another one. Siteground.com. Yep, we're almost an hour in. So we're gonna be here for a while. I hope that's okay with you. Again, if you need to jump off, jump off. We all have lives, but I'm gonna try to cover as much as I can. And then you can always come back and watch it. So web hostings, again, starting at $4. These guys talk about web space. Since web space these days is in the context of gigs, and if you think about how your phone has gigs and you pretty much never run out, the likelihood that you run out of web space for your website is very low. Traffic, also called bandwidth, is how much data gets transferred, right? So how many people come and look at your website. These guys at SiteGround, they call it monthly visits. So again, that's what you're paying for. That's how they kind of limit you. But for a whopping extra $2 a month, well, I guess that might be an intro price, and then maybe it goes up to $20 a month. But anyway, compare. Go read online reviews. Check out the few that I mentioned. Totally ignore me because you don't like the look of my face, and go find your own. Ask your nerdy nephew or brother or mom or whoever the nerd in the family is, and see what they say. And again, you can always switch. It's not fun to switch, so you want to do some research up front, but then at some point just pick one. Since you're talking about, if you hate it, you're losing $6. I realize that can be a lot to somebody and a little to somebody else, but again, we're talking about $6, not $600. So hopefully we can all afford to make at least one or two mistakes like that. Deidre says, I noticed Bluehost is using Microsoft 365. I prefer Apple and iOS to Microsoft. Are there hosting and web building software that works better for Apple users? So Microsoft 365 is some Microsoft product. I don't actually know what it is. It doesn't actually have to do with hosting. So generally, pretty much any host that you're going to rent space from, certainly all the ones that I'm showing you, anywhere that you're going to put WordPress or some other e-commerce solution, they all actually run on an operating system called Linux. Maybe you've heard of that. It's not very common for normal users like us. It's not run by Microsoft or Apple, who are the two primary companies that own operating systems. So the truth is any hosting company will work regardless of whether you, at least in the context of what I'm teaching here, any hosting company will work in the context of whether you are a Microsoft user and you have a Windows machine in front of you, or if you're an Apple user and you've got an iPhone or what have you. This is kind of something different. Great question. So yeah, so basically you shop around. Again, it's online shopping, so have some fun, get a glass of Chardonnay or tea, whatever your preference is, and go, compare and contrast, take some notes. you will probably, if you're building your first website, the truth is you're not probably going to get very much traffic up front. So a great place to start is, one of these basic plans. If it's not going to break the bank, buy the middle tier just because. But most of these hosting companies will also let you upgrade seamlessly without downtime. So if by dumb luck, you build a website and it does become very popular, you can then sign into your hosting company, and there's almost always an upgrade button. And so then you can, with a flick of a switch or a click of a button, you can jump from one plan to another. And again, now you've got, more disk space, more visitor, traffic allowances. And again, usually they don't, some of them list them, some of them don't, but usually you get a little bit more RAM, so essentially you get a little bit more power, associated with your hosting plan, right? So to recap where we're at, you buy a domain, corymoss.com, through the registrar, that domain points in an IP address. Now, how do we connect hosting to an IP address? Because that'll be the whole thread, right? So I've actually got, I use a very nerdy system. What's the best place to show this to you? I think just spin up. And if I sign in, okay, so down here, so this is where I have hosting. Please don't sign up for this. This is for nerds. I do a lot of hosting for other people, and this is a sort of a different beast. So pretend you're not seeing what I'm showing you, as far as spinupwp.com goes. But what I do want to show you is that, essentially when you sign into, like if you sign up for hosting with Bluehost, again, you're going to get an email that says, congrats, you now have an account at Bluehost. Or if you sign up with SiteGround, you're going to get an email after you check out that says, congrats, you now have but you don't have anything physical. All you've got is an account on that, on their website. So to manage your website, at least the bookkeeping and the ownership of your hosting plan, you're always going to sign back into wherever you buy hosting. So because I bought hosting through SpinUp, this is where I come in to maintain at a high level the ownership of this account, right? This would be like the bookkeeping for your business. So I've got an IP address you see here. Aha, here is the IP address, right? So when you buy hosting, they give you an IP address. And so maybe the way to think about it is when you buy a house, I'm buying one here in Claremont, knock on wood, in the next 2 weeks, it comes with an address, right? And so now I can route all of my mail to it. These are terrible analogies, but hey, I think they work. So if I go back into, you remember I bought corymoss.com over here at joker.com, right? So this is my registrar, and I go under what are called A records. This is where you point your website. You see that the IP address ends in 1358, right? And if I come over to spin up, oh, look at that, 1358. So the whole flow goes like this. You go buy a domain. I mean, technically you could buy hosting first, but you buy a domain, that's now sitting there. You buy hosting, that's now sitting there. Domains you're paying annually. Hosting you can buy for a year, but generally it's considered like a monthly cost. Your hosting plan comes with an IP address. You then, in your DNS, and I'm not gonna walk you through this because they all look a little different, but just remember these words, and this is how you can go Google it, is you go into your DNS, your domain name service, you've got what are called A records, and you're basically saying, when somebody types in corymoss.com, go to this IP address. You also want to set up when somebody goes to www, which you don't hear much anymore, but technically is a thing, also go to that IP address. That's it. Only an hour to explain how all that works. But technically at this point, that's the whole flow. Nate says, if I build a website, it will be heavy with photographs because that's what I do. Is this a consideration when choosing a hosting service? Yes, that's going to be the one time that, or not the one, if you host music, that's also something to consider. But think about this. One, you don't need, let me think through my analogy before I say it out loud. I'm supposed to be answer live. Oh, Rachel, we have a long way to go. Fear not. I will answer your question. She's asking what comes next. There's a lot. Okay, so to answer Nate's question, you have, he wants to build a website that's heavy with photographs. Let's pretend you're a photographer. You're opening up a gallery, right? Because the website is kind of like a storefront. You're probably not going to put every photo you've ever taken in that gallery. You're going to put a lot. You might put some. But so you shouldn't need to worry about, like, I like a lot of people have a hard drive full. I probably have 40 gigs of photos. And, you might be looking at, well, this comes with 10 gigs of web space. I'm not going to put all 40 gigs of photos up there. Nobody's going to look at 40 gigs of photos. I don't even look at my 40 gigs of photos. So yes, it's a consideration. You see these go up 20 gigs, 40 gigs. But, looking at the photos that you've got on your hard drive, you're going to pick some. I'm not going to say a number. It could still be thousands. But you're also probably not going to, and I don't recommend doing this, you're probably not going to put up all of them at full resolution so that they are, 5,000 by 5,000 pixels. For a couple of reasons. One, they take forever to download. Two, if it's high res, then people are more inclined to just download them and use them for themselves. And if you're an artist, you probably want to make sure you keep ownership. And then three, like I said, you've only got so much web space. You don't need to upload huge photos because our browser windows, my desktop or my laptop that I'm looking at right now is only this big. I don't need a photo that's technically this big, right? So it's definitely a consideration, but it's not one-to-one for photos I have on my hard drive equals, photos I'm going to put on my website. Mary says, do they go to the host IP address or the domain IP address? Sorry, I should have said that. Doesn't matter. I'm not sure who they is. If they is customers, then they are going to go to go back to my cheesy analogy, your vanity phone number, 1-800-FLOWERS, and that's going to get directed to your phone number, and then your phone is going to ring in your business, right? And I mean, technically, you can give somebody an IP address, but again, that's not friendly, that's not branded, and so that's kind of why I'm walking through all of these steps. Because everybody wants from the internet is to be able to say, I am Corey Moss, I am branding myself, I'm trying to tell you about me, or I'm trying to sell you my products. So I'm gonna send you to CoreyMoss.com, so you have to think about who I am and whatnot. And then behind the scenes, that goes to an IP address, and that goes to hosting. And then you see a website, which we don't have yet. So that is the segue into the next step. I'll pause here for any other questions. Take a sip of water. All right. So again, you're going, oh my God, that's so much. Holy cow, what do I do with all that? We can, you can rewatch this a bunch of times, and the first time you do it, you muddle through it, and then it gets easier and easier. Mary says, all of the A records address will go to the host IP address. Yes. So this is also where if you wanted to set up what's called a subdomain, so if I wanted to say shop.corymoss.com and I wanted it to point at the same website, I would add another A record here. Colleen, I'm not ignoring your questions about Constant Contact, but it's not pertinent right now. So I'll try to address them later. Allison says, are you recommending we use WordPress to create the content of our website? It's an option that I'm gonna go into in a little bit, but I'm gonna show you a few different options. Brenna says, how to protect images on a website from copyright, how to protect images from copyright violation. That's a whole other discussion. I'm not gonna go into it now. Feel free to send me an email or frankly, like Google it. I know some things, most people, but the internet's gonna have way better answers than I will. Valerie says, you said the host and domain need to connect. Then you went to my hosting company and the IP address was there. So you said it was connected. Correct, I've already done this. I didn't want to, you know, actually sit here and type for too long because I knew this would be a long class. So they are already connected because I connected them previously. Sorry, that's probably the question mark. So when I signed up for hosting, I got this IP address and then I came into joker.com and I said, add a new record. And I said, and I typed in, you see Cory Moss is already there because again, we're dealing with the one that I already bought, excuse me. And this is where I would put in my IP address and I hit add. And then once I hit add, a save button shows up and I hit save. Sorry, yes, I should have connected that whole piece. You will also see, once you do that, it might not be instantaneous because the truth is, you know, just like when you call your phone company, sometimes it takes time for a phone number to get registered and that kind of thing. So don't panic if it doesn't show up. They will actually email you and say it can take up to 24 or 48 hours. It very rarely does. But it'll usually happen within a few minutes, but don't panic if it's not instantaneous. I forgot to mention that as well. Okay, so we've got the whole flow, right? If you go to corymoss.com, it is now pointed at disk space, sitting on a computer owned by SpinUp, you know, but there's nothing there, right? If you go to corymoss.com, there's nothing there. So Rachel asks me to repeat the flow. So one more time, and I'm sure I'll repeat it a few more times because my intent here is for you guys to have the big picture, the whole sort of enchilada in your head. Enchiladas. And then, you know, there's lots of details, and I'm trying to touch on as many as I can, but I kind of want to demystify a lot of this stuff. So big picture, you go to a registrar, kind of like joker.com or similar, joker.com, hover.com, what did I say? Google.domains, domains.google. My notes. Get out of the way. Domains.google. Somebody else here recommended 1&1, or I guess Ionis. And you buy a domain. Depending on the domain you get, it's $12 a year, $20 a year, something like that. So now you own your domain, but it doesn't point at anything. So then you go to a hosting company, ones I recommend, Bluehost, SiteGround, GetFlywheel, and you sign up for an account. And so now you've got a place to put your website, but again, your domain does not point to that space yet. Oh, I know another phone number analogy, right? Back in the day, you had a phone number, and if you moved addresses within the same town, you could call and have that phone number transferred from the old house to the new house. So it's kind of like that. Like if you got a phone number and then you bought a house, now you've got to have that phone number pointed at the house. I feel like I'm totally living in the 80s here. So that's what we did. We went back into my registrar, which is joker.com, pointed the domain to the IP address. And so now, if you go to CoreyMoss.com, behind the scenes, it goes, a computer somewhere looks up CoreyMoss.com, points at an IP or sees, connects to an IP address. That IP address connects to SpinUp, which is my hosting company, but I do not recommend them for this kind of usage. And so then when somebody, now all the dots are connected, when somebody goes to CoreyMoss.com, they are going to see the website that I have hosted there, but that's what we're going to build next. Oh yeah, Allison asked what SpinUp is. Again, sorry to be vague, like just ignore SpinUp. Okay, so if you go to CoreyMoss.com, you are now seeing space, like an empty hard drive, or an empty folder, right? Like, oh, you can only see my browser. I'm going to, sure, let's share my whole screen. Why not? Go. Share. Okay, so it's kind of like, so, if you think about it as like a folder on your hard drive, this is where my website goes, right? There's nothing in it. And that's what you're seeing here, because maybe it's a house without furniture, more terrible analogies. Maybe it's an empty lot. That's what it is. We haven't built the house yet. Oh, I love awful analogies. But anyway, so that's what you're looking at, okay? So the next sort of technical piece here, just checking my notes. Hosting, DNS we covered. That's how you, where you put in your A records. Again, you point your domain to your hosting company. Okay, so the next thing is basically you have to access that empty hard drive space sitting on with your hosting company, right? So I guess the way to think about it is kind of like how you upload a photo to Facebook or something like that. You're taking a file that you have on your phone or on your local computer, and you are putting it onto their server, right? Like when you upload a photo to Facebook, it gets put on their server. So it's very similar to that, but it uses a tech called FTP, which is called File Transfer Protocol. More nerd speak. I recommend dropping that at the cocktail party on Friday as well. Oh yes, I was using File Transfer Protocol this week, and everybody will go, ooh. But it's essentially a fancy way for saying, you're uploading files. Rachel says, since I'm not technically oriented, and while I deeply appreciate having the big picture, would you please simplify? I'm getting bogged down in the technical. Rachel, if you want to ask some specific questions, if there are things that I haven't covered so far, let me know. But we do have a fair way to go. In order to upload to our website, because we don't want just anybody to be able to upload to our website, we use this thing called, or a technology called FTP. And again, it's like a fancy version of uploading. When you sign up for a hosting plan, they will send you FTP credentials, username, password. Just like, you're used to signing into, Facebook or Google or something with a username or password. And this, I apologize, but I'm gonna kind of gloss over. Because this is I'm just going to show you how to do it. Basically, what you end up doing, well, no, that's not true. What I'm going to show you is how it works. But honestly, my intent is that I hope you don't end up having to do this. But just, I want you to have, again, the big picture, sort of the technical knowledge of how this works, right? So you actually need a special program that does FTP. We use it as a verb. But basically like allows you to upload files to that web space. And the reason that it takes a special program is because, again, you don't want it to be like Facebook. You don't want it to be open where anybody can just upload stuff. Put simply, you end up downloading a program that is an FTP client, and there are free ones, FTP program or app, and you can say Mac or Windows. CyberDuck is free. FileZilla is free. You'll plug in your credentials, and you're going to have to Google, the actual instructions on how to do this. They're all a little bit different. But basically, what it comes down to is you see my local files on the left, and when I connect, and I know I'm being vague, and I apologize, and we can dig into this more later. But basically, I just want to show it to you. On the right, what you're seeing is the empty folder sitting on my server. And the way I want to illustrate this is if I open up a text program and I create a file that says, hello, CMS, right? And I save this to my desktop and I call it hello.txt, right? This is just a text file, plain text file. And then I come over to this special program that, again, is, so what I've got are my local files on the left. So this is my computer here. I go to my desktop. There's my hello.txt, right? There's nothing over on where my website is going to live. If I move that over, I'm just dragging and dropping it across. You see that it now exists on both sides. It's kind of like I uploaded it from my computer to, to CoreyMoss.com. If I come back over to CoreyMoss.com and I say hello.txt, we see hello CMS, right? So yes, Rachel, this is where it gets a little tricky, but if you're going to end up building a website manually, which is largely what not what I'm going to cover here today, but I just kind of want to keep going with showing you how this stuff actually works, right? So it's kind of like, when you, but to answer your question, you do need special software to transfer files from your local computer to your web space. But similar to, you go to Facebook and you upload a photo, all I did here behind the scenes, I know this feels technical, you're like, what is this FTP thing? Why do I need a special program? But behind the scenes, what I'm trying to illustrate is just that, you are just taking files, you are uploading them, and they are now available through a browser by anybody online. And so like, if you want to share, just share a single photo or share a resume or something like that. Like if this happened to be my resume, if I change this to, Corey Moss resume.txt, I go over here and I say Corey Moss resume.txt, like that's what you would see. It's just a file. It's just a file sitting there. Valerie says, it sounds like I have a lot of good information. Thank you. Is there any chance I can continue in part B? I can only do this right now once. But again, I'm going to keep going. Feel free to drop off. You don't have to stay here with me today. This is all being recorded. And so the recording will be available online. Mary says, so you would actually build a website on a program, then you would upload it using a special software. So yes, technically, like the way that us nerds build websites is we build them on our local computer and then we upload them. It's there's a lot of ways that can go, and there are a lot of rabbit holes to go down, and there's programming and complicated stuff. But again, what I'm trying to illustrate at a high level is, all you're looking at are files sitting on a computer in a closet, and then there is this thing called a domain that points to that hard drive, and that's what you're seeing. That's what a web page is. That's how the internet works. Allison asks, what's the best software for uploading files to our websites? So let's keep going with our notes here. So again, when you need to do this, and you're only going to need to do this sometimes, you're looking for FTP apps. They are sometimes called FTP clients. FTP, remember, is File Transfer Protocol, which is a really nerdy thing, but basically it's, it's how you upload files. File transfer, you're transferring files. The good free ones, I think, are FileZilla and wasn't there one about a duck? FTP clients, free. FileZilla, oh, Smart FTP is another good one. Smart FTP. Oh, CyberDuck? I don't remember. Duck. CyberDuck. No. Yes, CyberDuck. I just like the name. I like ducks. Ducks are cool. CyberDuck. So I think it's, some of you might use a special program to write email, like Outlook. Outlook is a special program for reading and writing email. This is a special program for uploading files to your website. It's just a piece of software. Feels like magic. So Rachel says, is there a way to buy a website and just create it from the website? Absolutely. And that's where WordPress comes in. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. So we're now going to, I think, get differently technical. It's all still a bit technical, but again, what I wanted to show here was kind of the bare bones, behind the scenes, close to the metal, as they say. This is how the engine of a car works, right? But you don't necessarily have to think about the engine, at least on a daily basis. It's a terrible analogy because I'm not sure where I'm going next. But it's the under the hood, and so hopefully, I mean, depending on the car you drive, I'm not very mechanically inclined when it comes to automobiles. I don't think a lot about what goes on under the hood. Anyway, so that's kind of that part. Let me just check my notes here. Make sure I'm on where I want to be. Yes. Okay. So now we're talking about actually building a website. Now, hopefully, you've got a high-level idea of how people get to a website, what a website is, right? It's just files sitting on a hard drive, sitting on a computer, in a closet, managed by nerds. You've bought access to that hard drive. You've bought a domain name. You've connected them. Okay. Took me an hour and a half to talk through, but it might actually take you 20 minutes to do all of this. At least once you're comfortable with it. It's not. I don't want to say it's not that complicated. It's complicated, but you can just sort of step through it. Rachel says, good analogy, but I just need my car to go. Absolutely. Okay. So you want to build a website, right? Again, conceptually starting there, things that I want you to think about are do some planning, right? It's kind of like if you're going to build a masterpiece, if you're a sculptor or painter or whatever, you certainly can. Some people just jump in and start bashing away or throwing paint on a canvas. But let's pretend that that's not always the case. Or at least some artists are going to step back. They're going to make a plan, I guess more for, craft than art, right? If you're going to build a rocking chair, generally you're not going to just pick up pieces of wood and start trying to put them together. You're going to step back, you're going to make a plan. So I highly recommend that you step back and think about what you want your website to do and do for you, and what kind of website you want it to be, and kind of what you want it to look like, right? So broadly speaking, you know, you've got a website that's a brochure. A couple of pictures. It talks a little bit about what you do. You've got a website that people are going to interact with more. Maybe there's galleries. Maybe you want to do writing. You want to have a voice, or you want to show more of your art and that kind of thing. Things like blogging are included in that. And then the third big one, of course, is e-commerce, which I think is why most of us are here. You know, you have stuff, you want to sell it. So these are things that I want you to think about and kind of decide on. Like, pick one. Brochure is obviously the easiest. You want to just get something working. But a quick mistake, I have a friend who is setting up his first website, and he immediately overwhelmed himself because he's like, well, it needs a shopping cart, and it needs a blog, and it needs a navigation, and it needs a contact form, and it needs all that. And I'm like, no, dude, like, it needs a homepage where people can contact you for now. And then you can add on this other stuff, but you don't try to put everything in all at once. So some tips here. Keep it simple. You know, pick one thing that you wanted to do. Again, I recommend with just getting a hello world, this is me, you know, here's 1 or 2 pictures kind of website up. Make a plan. And you can even do it in steps. Like, okay, step 1, make it a brochure site, just pictures of me. Step 2, figure out how to make a gallery. Step 3, make it so that people can buy each of the thing in the gallery. And then from a design perspective, you know, go browse your favorite websites and basically copy or plan to copy what you see. And I'm not talking about art here. I'm not talking about plagiarism, but the general look and feel. Most of the websites that I bet you go to that you like are very airy. There's lots of white space. They're generally pretty simple in layout. Rachel asks, is a brochure site like a landing page? Absolutely. Great analogy, or great. I'm glad you brought that up. Landing page is the way a lot of people describe, like, yeah, a brochure site. Sorry, I think I just dismissed your question. Anyway, but that's the answer. But okay, so those are some things to think about. Like, go bookmark a bunch of websites, take screenshots of websites that you like. You know, look at how they work. Decide what you like about them, what you don't like about them, what colors you like, what colors you don't like. Tone of voice. Are they casual? Are they very businessy? You know, is it light? Is it dark? Things like that. And then those are the things that you want to just take some notes on, and then you can look at incorporating into your website. All right, Corey, enough already. Just show us how to make a freaking website. Okay, so there is just like you run software on your local computer, there is a software called WordPress. WordPress is software that runs on your server, okay? So it basically is a website, but it's a website that does stuff, that does fancy stuff. So it's kind of like, you know, you download a game to your local computer, right? You've got files on your local computer, just like I had that file that said hello CMS, right? Or you've got files that are like your Word docs, or, you know, you've got a photo. Let's see, I must have a photo here somewhere. Downloads, testing. Right, here's a picture of a tree, right? It's a file, but then I also, on my computer, have programs. And so websites basically can be the same thing, where either you can have a single file or multiple files or what have you, or you can have software. Now, the nice thing about software, kind of like playing a game locally, is that it just runs, and you can interact with it, and you don't have to think about the engine that's under the hood. I'm using that same analogy in a different context, confusing the heck out of you. But the idea is that so what I just did was I have a copy of WordPress, which is software made up of a bunch of files that I've put on the hard drive on my server. And so now, if I hit refresh, you see I've got this whole fancy web page. There, seminar done. Have a good day, everybody. It's been great talking to you. I'm just kidding. So Mary says, so it's like downloading QuickBooks. It's software, but then you have to own QuickBook files. That's actually a great analogy. You know, and QuickBooks will generate different files, right, or interact different files. My point is specifically that, you know, sitting on your hard drive, you've got software that's just made up of files that's just sitting there, but you're interacting with it. It's run as a program. But you've also got files that are just files. And so WordPress, and the reason why I showed you the test.txt before, right, is I want you to understand behind the scenes that web pages are just files sitting there. And so WordPress is just software, is software, but it's just made up of files. I'm driving a point home that's not important. What's neat now is that if you go to most hosting companies, they have this thing called WordPress hosting. And what they're going to do is they are going to not only give you hard drive space, but they are going to install the WordPress software for you. Okay? So now you're probably frustrated with me because I told you a whole bunch of information that technically you didn't need, but I really want you to understand how this stuff works to try to take some of the magic out of it. Because if I just showed you how to sign into a WordPress website, when something breaks, you're gonna freak. And it's gonna feel scary and overwhelming because it's just magic. Whereas what you now hopefully know is that, oh, this is some files sitting on a hard drive, blah, blah, blah. And so it's something that you can work with, you can interact with that, and you can try to, when you get help with, it's not just, you know, walking into an Apple store and going, I don't know what's broken. You know, in the context of a makerspace and in the mindset of a maker, I want you to have as much background as you can. So thank you for bearing with me. All right, so the other option, to totally contradict myself, the other option when you sign up for web hosting is WordPress hosting. If you choose to use WordPress to manage your website, then this is a great option. It's easy. They set it up for you. You sign in, and then you've got a website up and running. It just kind of looks like Hello World. What is WordPress? WordPress is software, like I mentioned. It's what's called a content management system. Breaking those words apart, it's for managing content, right? So it's for managing the pages on your website. It's for uploading photos, all that kind of stuff. There are lots of different CMSs out there. WordPress has become kind of the industry standard. It's free. And so a lot of people like that. And because it's become as popular as it has, there is this whole ecosystem around it, right? It's kind of like there's a lot more Honda people who repair Hondas because there are a lot more Hondas on the road kind of thing. That might not be true, but let's pretend it is. More terrible analogies. But the idea is that because WordPress is popular, there are a lot more WordPress developers. There are a lot more add-ons. If you Google WordPress anything, if you Google WordPress, oops, did I spell it right? WordPress e-commerce, you know, there's a ton of stuff out there to help you use WordPress in the way that you want. To answer one of the questions from earlier, how does WordPress compare with something like Squarespace or Wix? Brenna says, thank you for explaining the big picture. You're welcome. I truly hope that it is helpful. I want to empower. Hopefully that's what I did and I didn't just confuse. But anyway, so Squarespace and Wix, and there are many other products out there that are similar. They try to simplify, they do simplify most of what I've just walked you through. But naturally, it's kind of like, you know, an app on your phone. There's only so much you can do, right? Because one app on your phone or one service can't do everything. And so to me, well, and then there's other things that I don't like personally. I don't like, as I described earlier, I don't like one company controlling my domain and controlling my website and controlling essentially how I build a website, right? Their design's going to be the designs that are available are going to be limited. The functionality is going to be limited. And then the truth is, the more options you want, the more you have to pay. And so they are an option. But for me, I like more freedom. And I really like the WordPress ecosystem, because if I'm paying $12 a year for a domain, and then I'm paying, let's say, $10 a month for hosting, WordPress, and I'll show you in a sec, there are 50,000 WordPress plugins, free WordPress plugins, and there've got to be tens of thousands free themes. And there's lots of paid add-ons, paid plugins, paid themes, but you can get really far without being locked into a system, okay? So that's kind of the, my argument, or my, why I often will dissuade people from Squarespace or Wix. Jumping ahead a little bit, one of the big questions is e-commerce. E-commerce is actually, I often will go the other way when discussing e-commerce. So in e-commerce, there are, the same way that you can use a service like Squarespace or Wix to build a website, you can use a service like Shopify or Etsy for e-commerce. Etsy is more of a marketplace. You don't really get much of a website there. Shopify is sort of a middle ground, where its intent is you create an account there, you upload your pictures of the stuff you want to sell, and you can do some customization, but it's pretty much, it's a shopping cart. Like a buddy of mine runs a tea company, and when he called me and said, do I want to build a website? I was like, no, you want to go to Shopify, because going back to what I said earlier, what he wanted out of a website was to sell stuff. He didn't want a blog. He didn't want, you know, image galleries. He didn't want anything else. He just wanted to sell. And Shopify is really, really good for that. So I do recommend, you know, if that answers your question, sorry, it took me an hour and 40 minutes, hit stop, go sign up for a Shopify account, start selling your stuff. There's a bunch of other products that are similar to Shopify. I haven't had experience with them, so I don't want to recommend them. Other than, I guess Gumroad is the only one, or Snipcart, or so I guess I do have a couple to recommend. Gumroad and Snipcart look pretty good. I don't have a lot of experience with them. I think they're a little more geared towards selling digital stuff like ebooks or photos or what have you. But again, where basically they are a shopping cart, you're signing in, you know, it's not really a website. You're not building a website per se. You're creating a shopping cart with them. But if that's your only goal, do it. You don't need to mess around with the rest of this stuff. So there's a little digression for you. So getting back to WordPress. So WordPress, a content management system, is software that when you sign in, essentially lets you build a website, and then when somebody visits, it shows them the website, okay? So this is a default WordPress installation with the default 2020 theme that it comes with. And it looks like this. They give you a Hello World blog post, because they did start as a blogging platform. And so you'll see a lot of emphasis on blogging, but you don't have to use it for that. The way that I use it most of the time, I log in, assuming I remember a password. Let's go get, nobody look. I don't remember my password. This isn't embarrassing at all. Oh, goodness. Everybody take a 3-minute break while Corey goes and tries to find his password. I think I know where it is. Let's see if this works. Way, look at that. Like magic. Yes, save my password. Okay. So I have signed into WordPress. Okay. So, and you see that it says corymoss.com/wp-admin. Colleen asks, does WordPress provide analytics? Some, but there's plugins. So I can jump ahead to the plugins part and show you. What most people do is integrate Google Analytics. Google has a product called Analytics, where they, and it's kind of the industry standard for tracking traffic on your website. Kind of out of the scope of this webinar, but the truth is if you say, again, like I said, the joy of WordPress is every problem has been solved and blogged about. WordPress, set up Google Analytics, how to use Google Analytics on WordPress, how to install Google Analytics in WordPress, and it's very easy. There's a plugin, you plug in a little ID and you're done. Sorry to skim over it, but trying to stay focused, excuse me. Sarah says, I'm glad I'm not the only one who has to find my password. Yep, we're all human. Okay, so just to sort of reiterate what's going on here, right? If I go to the homepage, corymoss.com, I see the web page, and this is what visitors would see, right? I signed in, I went to log in, and this isn't always in the same place. It said log in because I'm logged in, it now says log out, right? But when I log in, I see what is called the WordPress dashboard. And this is where you manage your site, right? So again, there's an unfortunate emphasis on posts. Posts are blog posts. And because WordPress was started as a blogging platform. And so again, on my homepage, right, I've got Hello World. If I go into posts, here is Hello World. If I say edit, and I say, go away, I say, hello CMS, and I say update, and I go back to my home page and I hit refresh. See, it says hello CMS, right? So from the admin, I am controlling the content. I am managing the content, CMS, content management system. I am managing the content on my website. And that's the joy of WordPress. Like I made that change, from Hello World to Hello CMS. I hit update, and then I went to my homepage, and then it was updated, and that's the power of it, right? I didn't have to change any files locally and upload them. I didn't have to think about all of that nerdy stuff that I told you about earlier that's under the hood. It's just kind of there. Just clicking away. Okay, so that's kind of the basics of that guy. Let me get back to my notes here. Okay. So WordPress is just software. The next thing I want to show you is, so again, there's an unfortunate emphasis on posts, but WordPress also offers pages. Okay, and these are just web pages, right? Like most of us have heard that phrase, web page. Website, most of us think of, or when somebody says website, what you should think about is all of the pages, the whole experience, going to, Facebook.com. But a web page is often what's referred to as, or when you mean something specific, like if I go to facebook.com/groups or /Corey, and you see my profile, like a single page is a web page, different from a website, right? So here's where you can manage pages. So by default, WordPress comes with a sample page, very exciting. If I click on view, right, it opens up a sample page. Here's the sample page. And again, what you're seeing is if I say edit, I want to make sure that it's clear what's going on. So behind the scenes, you see that I'm still in WP admin. Here is where I can edit this sample page. This is an example page. You know, but if I change this to CMS, right, and I hit update, and then I go back to the page, which is, you know, / sample page, this is what your visitors might see. And if I hit refresh, see, it says CMS, right? So this is how you can manage on the back end or in the admin what people see when they visit your website. Beth says, is there an HTML view? Yes, so I'm not really going into HTML too much here, but HTML is basically the syntax that sits behind a web page. So like the way that you make this big or the way that you make this a paragraph is by adding special syntax to text files, and it's called HTML. And so you can edit as HTML. See, so like here's how you denote a paragraph. If I wanted to make something bold, then I would say bold. I don't remember how to switch back. Edit visually. See how this is bold now? Okay, so if you want to get that specific, if you want to get into the nuts and bolts, then that's where I think maybe before the class I was talking about. But you can go get books that are like how to build a web page. And again, the difference here is I'm trying to show you how to set up a website. So I'm trying not to get too into the weeds, as I already have, but get more into the weeds. Mary says, do you need to know HTML syntax to make the website on WordPress? No, and that's exactly why I wasn't even going to go into it really, is that you know, what you see here, and I'm going to take this even a step further, is, you know, this is basically called a page editor or a block editor, because they look at these as blocks of content, right? And so you've got this visual representation, like, you know, I showed you, if I make this bold, and then I come and I look at it, it's bold. And so it's a visual representation of what people are going to see. So the idea is that the HTML is generated behind the scenes. Does WordPress offer sample templates, or do we need to create everything from scratch? Do we need to create everything from scratch? You heard me talk about themes. Let's leave this page. So I'm going back to the admin, right? So this is the default theme that WordPress comes with. And then what's really, really cool about WordPress is bopping down here, you see appearance, themes. And so these just happen to be the themes that I have installed. But if you go to add new, and again, I'm going through this quick because honestly, you can go WordPress theme. So you don't really need to know where the exact buttons are. But there are 1,000,001, maybe not that many, but themes out there available for WordPress. So if I go to add themes, you know, built into WordPress, they have this, I don't know what you call it, folder, repository, those are nerd words, place to shop, but all of these themes are free. So if any of these look good to you, then try them out. They're all free. A lot of these, the one caveat to that is a lot of these are gateways essentially to paid products. And so most of them will have, at some point, will try to sell you something. But the WordPress ecosystem does a pretty good job of monitoring itself, of policing itself. And so most anything that you're going to encounter is very usable. And the stuff that they will try to sell you, it's not like you're going to set up a beautiful website and then they're going to say, you know, pay me $100 or nobody can see this. What you see is what you get. If you create a web page and it looks the way it looks, then that's how it works. They're just usually your upsells to, like, if you want to add extra features or extra functions, that's where you're going to see it. But so let's say I really like the Satori theme, right? I click install. I say activate. See, here you go. Here's an upsell. Thank you for trying out Satori. Satori Premium is 50% off, and it's only $12. So frankly, if you like it, I recommend going and supporting the developer anyway. But the point is that if I go back to themes, you can see that I'm in themes. You can see that, you know, among the other themes that I already had here, I now have the Satori theme. You know, it is active. And if I go back to my website and I hit refresh, here's the Satori theme, right? So you can sit there and try every theme you want. Just remember, when you hit save or when you hit activate, that's what people are seeing. So, you know, as you're activating each one of these themes, if I keep coming back to your website, it's going to look different every time. So, you know, so be a little careful. But the joy of this, again, is that it's free. And then the same thing with plugins. Plugins are little bits of code that get added. I'm trying to think of what else uses plugins, like on your phone or what have you. But basically, it's just ways that you can add more functionality. So actually, so let's use the example from earlier. Let's say I wanted to install Google Analytics, right? Go to plugins, go to add new. Here's all of the plugins. I'd search for Google Analytics. And it came back with 1,690 items, all of these pertaining to Google Analytics. It's up to you to try these out. You can install them, try them, and then uninstall them. There is no harm. Most of them are pretty good about, they probably won't break your website. There's always a chance, so I'm not gonna say never. The things to look at is just like in Amazon, if you're buying an Amazon product, you want to be cognizant of reviews, right? So if you look for something and it's got 1 star and 6 reviews, don't try it. It's probably not very good. Or go read the reviews, I suppose. But things like this, where it's like you've got Google Analytics dashboard, the best Google Analytics plugin. It has 2 million installs. 1,800 reviews is a lot for WordPress, seeing as like the one next to it has 81, and it's almost 5 stars. I'd give this one a try. It looks pretty reputable. Rachel says, can the site be designed before it goes live? Yes, sites can be designed before they go live. It's a little trickier, or there's a lot of different ways to do it, I guess is what I want to say. But you can even actually come in and look at, under plugins, you can say preview. Let's see what we got. Public post preview, or I think theme preview. But I guess here's the way I want to empower you, right? You have a question. Can a site be designed before it goes live? I'm going to go to Google. I'm going to say WordPress preview theme without activating. How to preview a theme before activating. Save live preview without activating. You get my point, right? Go read a bunch of articles. Here's even a dummies.com. Somebody asked earlier if there was a website for dummies. There is WordPress for dummies. But here's, a Google search finds a pretty good article or what looks like a pretty good article that says how to preview, your design. Thank you, Mary. Another analogy or another thing that uses plugins, Google Chrome, the browser we're looking at right here, uses plugins. So, if you've seen plugins that you can install, it's the same sort of thing. Colleen says, is there a way to set up a website, do editing, and then when you're ready, click launch? It looks like what you're doing is editing in real time, which is true. Can you save and wait to present to the public? That must be possible. You are absolutely right. Whoops, I clicked done. But anyway, first of all, I just again to drive the point home, WordPress coming soon, or under construction, right? So get creative with your Googling under construction. But I bet if I come into plugins and I say under construction, there you go, lots of them, even animated. Look at that fanciness. But the point is that, do that. If you already have a URL, if you already have people going to the URL and you don't want them to see it. But the other thing to remember is if you actually start at the beginning of this webinar and you buy a domain, nobody knows that domain exists. Nobody's going to that domain. So you can build a website in public if a tree falls in the woods, but nobody knows that you bought the domain treefallsinthewoods.com, then nobody's there to hear it, then it doesn't matter, right? So I would only really worry about being under construction once you've got a website up and running and you've got some traffic and there's stuff that you know people are going to see what's already there. You don't want them to see what you're working on. Okay, so those are themes and plugins, kind of the other thing that you should know about. And then taking this one step further, there's somebody asked, can you start, basically, do you have to use a theme or can you start with a blank canvas? So I actually use what's called a page builder. I know I'm getting very insider baseball here, but I'm trying to just get it all out, and you guys can keep coming back to this to refer to it over and over again. But I have a plugin installed. No, I don't. I have a plugin that I bought called Beaver Builder, and it is what's called a page builder. And so kind of like how WordPress already has a page builder built in, there's one that I like better called Beaver Builder. So I am going to install that. And what that does is it changes the way that you saw that whole, like how you can lay out pages, right? So like if I go to add a new page, this is what's built into WordPress. New page, and then they have me adding blocks, paragraph, image, gallery. This was added to WordPress just in the last couple of years. I find it a little tricky. Whereas I've used, and maybe it's just because I've used Beaver Builder for a long time. But after installing Beaver Builder, which is paid, so I paid $50 for it at some point. Then when I come, like what it shows me instead of in the admin that you saw a minute ago is I'm actually building, here's what my website actually looks like. Remember, because we changed to that theme. I can say, I want to add a heading. So I drag that over. And in that heading, I say hello, right? And behind it, you see how that's, I'm live editing, but I can see what it's actually going to look like. So I tend to like this a little bit better. The other advantage that I have found of Beaver Builder is that it comes with page templates. And so you can pick and choose, some of these, and they've got more that you pay for, and they're third parties. Third parties, other developers that have built themes that you can go and download. There's a whole ecosystem around it, so you can go and download and buy different things. But for $50 or whatever, this gets you going, and I find it a little better of an experience. That's just me. Beth asks, is Beaver Builder like Dreamweaver? Yes, and in fact, also the page builder in many ways. The one that's built into WordPress is kind of like Dreamweaver. For those of you who've never heard of Dreamweaver, that's fine. It's a special program, as we've talked about, that you have locally, but that would let you build websites. Mary says, can you use Beaver Builder while using the WordPress themes? Yes. So Beaver Builder is, again, it's very similar to this, where it's not meant to take over the whole site. It's really just more of an option for you editing the contents of specific pages. I'm gonna keep moving along. I know I'm going high level, but we're at 2 hours, and so I'm trying to just kind of, at this point, I think we're just window shopping. I'm trying to show you some of the nicer features here. why I like WordPress. But again, the empowerment here, the place to take it is go start Googling. So some other things, the media, this is where WordPress makes it really easy for you to upload stuff. So if I wanted to add pictures, I can either add them here, or if I'm working on a page, we can do this from the other end. In my new page that I created, right? I can say add an image, upload an image. I go pick my image. Whatever, you get the point. I had a record come out. No, this is a picture from a house. There you go. So I upload a picture of a house. Now that picture is there. If I hit publish, view page, boom, there's that picture, right? Good analogy. Colleen says, so this is the interior decorating. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So again, sort of the three, we'll wrap up with this, kind of the few different ways that you want to use your website, right? One is you want to show people stuff. So again, uploading images, creating pages. If you want to talk about current issues, or if you want to talk about the work you're doing, or what have you, WordPress has built-in blogging functionality. I can do this real quick. Nancy asks, how do you change the size of a picture? So if I go back into the editor here, right, I click on it, you see that there's some little dots. So I can just drag, resize, and that's smaller. But one of the things that I don't like about the built-in builder is if I wanted to put a couple of photos next to each other or whatnot, it's still kind of a clunky experience in here. Whereas what I like, I'm going to jump back over to Beaver Builder. Can you tell I'm a fan of Beaver Builder? I should have created an affiliate program or something. But what they start with are rows. And so like if I wanted two things next to each other, I would put in a 2-column row and then, oops, duplicate, so now I'm 3. But what they call modules, I would then go in and I would find a photo. Oops, that's not where I wanted it. Photo, right, drag a photo in there. Photo source from the media library. So I'm gonna jump in here and find that photo that I uploaded a minute ago. And so there's that, right? And so I find it easier to do layouts like this, which again comes back to planning. So you want to think ahead and say, oh, I want this page to have 3 columns, or I want this page to have a big block of text and then 3 columns or whatever. I find this to be a little more intuitive than that which is built in, but I do recommend trying what's built in. You know, it can't hurt to have an understanding of, again, how all these things work. We are creative makers after all, right? Okay. So that's kind of showing stuff. Again, oops, done, publish. WordPress has a built-in blog post or blogging platform, which I'm not really going to go into, but what I want to talk about at a high level is blogging is really best for regular news, right? Blogging is not, don't think of blogging as, you know, pages. It will technically create a page for each blog post, but they have a date associated with them. And blogging is really more for, you know, it's like a diary, what have you. If you want to walk your fans, your followers through a process of like, I'm going to learn how to pot. Today I bought some clay. And then the next day you're like, I got my wheel set up and here's some pictures. Like that's, you know, that's what blogging is good for, as opposed to what I think most of us really want our websites for is, again, the brochure, landing page style, e-commerce. You want pages, right? So you want a page per product, or a page that describes your process. Think of pages as much more static. much more like if you're familiar with Facebook pages, right? A page is static, it doesn't change. Whereas a Facebook post, maybe or maybe not, people see it and then it's gone unless they go back in time and look for it. I'm going to keep teasing you. One other functionality is that a lot of people are going to want is a contact form. Another way you want people to interact with your website is have them send you an email. So again, what I recommend is you go to plugins, you go to add new. Basically, if you ever want some sort of new functionality, start with a plugin. So contact form 7 is great. Ninja Forms is great. I usually am wearing their t-shirt. I like their t-shirts. Lots of options. Try them, test them, install it. It'll create a contact me page. Go and fill it out. Send yourself an email. Make sure it works. Okay. Finally, e-commerce. Like I said, if you are not going to go with a third-party thing, we're going to keep teasing you. How to upload a video to WordPress. So video actually gets uploaded the same way as photos do, or the reason why they call it media is not photos is because you can upload audio, video, whatever you want. But as a person who's done this for a long time, I actually highly recommend instead upload the photo to YouTube, which is free, or a paid account like Vimeo, and then embed the photo. Okay. Videos are large. They take up a lot of bandwidth. They take up a lot of disk space. And WordPress, well, technically will allow you to stream a video, is not optimized for it. Whereas we all know that YouTube is all about, what they do is stream videos. So it's a much better product for it. And I'll leave that there. Nancy says, can you download JPEGs, et cetera, into the site? Well, so what we're talking about is uploading. So you're taking photos from your phone or from your local computer and uploading them. And that's what I did a minute ago, where I went into media, I said add a new, so that's uploading. What you can actually do too is this fanciness that is like, so here's my local, my local hard drive, right? Here's a photo I can drag and drop, and you see the screen turn blue. Look at this fanciness. Drop files to upload, right? So now that file is there. Oh, another picture of a ramp. Woohoo! But you get the idea. It's now there, and because it's now in my media library, I have access to it anywhere else on the website. Nancy also asked about PDFs. Yep, PDFs get uploaded same way. Usually they're pretty small. You can host them here, but again, as I described earlier on, there's a difference between files and software, right? So a PDF is a file. And so when you want to give a PDF to somebody through your website, you're going to end up creating a link to that specific file. So I'll leave it there. We can always talk about it more later. Because I want to get to the final bit, because we are at 2.25 hours. Thank you all for your patience. Is e-commerce. Okay, so what did I say a minute ago? If you think you want to add functionality to your WordPress website, best place to start is plugins. Add new. Mary says, do you have to have a domain and a host site, or I think she means hosting account, before you work on your website, before you work on your site on WordPress? Yes, right? Because it's kind of like if you went to Best Buy and bought a piece of software, you have to have a computer to install it on, right? Just sitting in a box doesn't work. So you have to sign up for these things in order to have, a hard drive accessible by a domain, somewhere to install that software. Okay, so e-commerce. Generally speaking, well, let's see what comes up. E-commerce. WooCommerce is going to come up first. So WooCommerce is a product now built and maintained by the same people who build and maintain WordPress itself. So it is generally the best place to start, if not probably the industry standard. So if we, install it. But again, I want to emphasize, for the sake of empowerment, that one, it's just a plugin. Two, this is all just software, right? WooCommerce, get your store up and running more quickly with our new and improved setup. Sure. Where's your store based? I'm setting up a store for a client. Well, let's see if I can back out of this now. I don't want to do all this stuff. No. There you go. So we're back here, right? But so I've installed a plugin. If I don't, you know, at the end of the day, like if that experience made me mad, I don't want it. I can go to plugins, find WooCommerce, and I could say deactivate. I don't really want to do that right now, but I just want to show you, like, you are in control. You know, this stuff is going to, again, feel foreign and whatnot. But this is your website. You are in control. And we'll talk about it in a minute when you break it by accident. But anyway, so we have WooCommerce installed. So there's a new item over here called WooCommerce. Just like any plugin, and just like how I taught you to empower yourself, right? If you're trying a new plugin and you're kind of like, I don't know where to start, how about Googling WooCommerce getting started? Getting started. There you go. Getting started archives. You get the point. What I actually know, oh no, I'm stuck. I don't want to do any of this stuff. See, now it thinks that I want to set this up altogether. But what it comes down to is, let's see if I delete it and reinstall it. Don't you love my professionalism, how I had all this ready to go? Oops, that's not the right place. Add a new plugin. Candace asks, just below WooCommerce was PayPal. WooCommerce, WooCommerce. I think I have it abbreviated. WooCommerce, there we go. Okay, WooCommerce, so below Woo, there's probably a PayPal something somewhere. There are different ones, try them all. PayPal is actually a way to accept payment, which is a little different from WooCommerce, which is a shopping cart. A shopping cart is right where, you know, we're all used to them, but we might not think about them consciously. But a shopping cart is where you're browsing products, adding them into a cart and checking out. That's what WooCommerce offers you. That's actually different from accepting payment, which is PayPal. And then there's another service called Stripe. But these plugins are actually pretty good about walking you through how to accept payments and how to set all that stuff up. Let's see if I can skip the WooCommerce setup experience again this time. Nope. Thanks a lot. Continue. Let's see if we can. Sure, we'll sell physical products, right? How many products do I plan to display? 1 to 10. Currently selling elsewhere? No. I don't want to market on Facebook, but you see, I mean, there's a million options, and you'll have to go check out all this stuff. Continue with my active theme. They also are trying to show me other WordPress themes. Again, try them out. Enhance your store with Jetpack. No, thank you. Trying to sell me some crap. Okay. Set up your store. Add your first product. Add manually. You can also import. You can migrate. Here's a new product. I am going to sell a widget. Product description. I'm going to put in some gobbledygook. Scrolling down, there's product data. This is a simple product. I want to sell it for 10 bucks. And don't get me wrong, like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm scrolling down and I'm kind of figuring it out. And that's, you know, I have to leave that with you, right? You're going to have to figure this stuff out too. Part of the joy is setting up a website that, buying a new domain, like I said, is that nobody knows that the domain exists. So you can come and make mistakes, you know, and just kind of figure this stuff out. We are makers after all, right? We are empowered. We are confident. We are not afraid of making mistakes. So let's see, I'm going to sell this widget for 10 bucks. I'm going to hit publish. And so you see that there is now a page for my product. You can go to corymoss.com/product/widget. It costs $10. You can add it to the cart. Rachel said, how will we fill in that form? I assume that she means the form that I kept trying to avoid. I just didn't want to take the time to do it. Originally there was a little skip this option link that I just didn't click. But honestly, if you're going to sell stuff, you want to fill that out. You want either an address or something that denotes you as a legitimate business. If you are worried about putting in your home address, if you don't have a storefront, I've used PO boxes before. And then frankly, you can make something up, or you could use the makerspace, because it's a public space. That's always an option too. Rachel said, what is the difference between upload and migrate? I believe what we saw a minute ago was WooCommerce was asking me how I wanted to add products. And there was an option to migrate. So migrate, I assume, would be from another system. So if you've already got products in Shopify or some other third-party system, and you want to move those products over, I suspect that they've got an option for you to migrate all of your data into the WooCommerce shopping system. As opposed to upload, I imagine you could upload a spreadsheet. If you've got all of your products with SKU numbers and prices, there's a way to just get a bunch of products in there all at once. Or essentially muddle through what I'm doing here, which is adding products one at a time. Rachel said, so actual address, not the website. Use your best. This is how you're representing yourself. This is your website. So, where I only sell digital products, like, I have a plugin for WordPress that I sell. Because it's digital, I don't ever include a physical address. Why would I? You're buying something digital off of the internet, But if you're building, like my mom does, stained glass, birds, right, that you can hang in a window. And so she might actually want more of a physical representation, or, she works out of a craft shop or craft space at her retirement community. So she might list that, and or she sells them at crafts fairs. So she might list those kinds of addresses. So yeah, I know I'm zipping through this, but I didn't even think I'd be talking this long. But yeah, so I guess the point is so let me recap all this, right? Then we'll wrap it up. You can ask lots of questions. So you go to a registrar, remember those 2 hours ago, and buy a domain. You go to a hosting company and you buy a plan. And then you go back into your registrar and you point the domain name to the hosting company, right? If you want to build your own website, then you're going to be uploading files via FTP. And that's also how I got WordPress to working there, right? I downloaded WordPress, the software, from WordPress.org, not .com. .com is hosting, excuse me. See, there's a big, let's see, get WordPress. It should say download, but whatever. Download WordPress, right? And then I FTP'd those files up there. I uploaded them. But a lot of hosting companies also offer, oh, there it is, right in front of me, WordPress hosting. There you go. And so that'll actually save you that step. So what they'll do is install WordPress for you, which is pretty slick. So then you end up with a Hello World WordPress website accessible from your domain. You sign into WordPress, and then you're immediately confused and overwhelmed by all of the options. But what you want to focus on primarily are pages. And so you can say add a page. You can edit the pages that are there. That's how you're going to build the foundation of your website, the pages. The about me or the contact me. And then as you want to add functionality, you're going to add plugins. So you can go into, where'd it go? Plugins, add new. And that's where you'd say, You know, I want a contact form. Let me see what's available. I want e-commerce. Let me see what's available. I want, there's some basic photo gallery kind of functionality built in, but if you want something fancy, go look for plugins. I'm a musician, so if I want to stream my music that is all on SoundCloud, I bet there are SoundCloud plugins for embedding the music so it looks good and people can play it. You know, sky's the limit. So that's kind of, and it's all free. Again, there are paid options. I paid for Beaver Builder, you know, but the point is that if you try something that's free and they're trying to sell you something and you don't want to pay for it, don't pay for it. But I also strongly recommend that, like, you know, these are people putting hard work into building these products for you. Think about paying $12. I mean, whatever it is. So now that you have your website set up, what happens when you break it? WordPress has some debugging stuff built in. You can, depending on your hosting company, you can contact them, but they are more about, like, if you run out of bandwidth or if the whole website won't load, you know, that's when you're going to talk to them. They are more, they're like the car manufacturer. You wouldn't really contact them if your car was breaking down, right? What you're more likely to want to do is, 1, start Googling. 2, reach out to your techie friends and family. There are, the place that I've answered a lot of questions is there are meetups. You know, so people get together, well, they used to, but even online, there are virtual meetups, and there are forums, and there are communities. WordPress.org has a very active community. So if you go under, I guess it's get involved. Oh, support, forums, there you go. So welcome to support. There's a ton of documentation. Every plugin has documentation. So, you know, start reading. Every plugin that's available for free through WordPress. So if you go to WooCommerce in here, if I can spell, WooCommerce, enter. So if, you know, if you get stuck on WooCommerce, you can't figure out how to add a product. If you come to the WooCommerce page, support, ask a question. And then hire somebody like me. I am not for hire, but hire somebody like me, where there are, again, the advantage of WordPress being, I think that they say that WordPress now is used to maintain something like 1/3 of the internet. So there are billions of websites and 1/3 of those are controlled by WordPress, people using this software to maintain their websites. That means that there are a lot of people out there that are experts in this stuff and are happy to help you for an hourly fee. So you can go on Upwork, you can, anyway, there's lots of different places you can find freelancers, and, you know, and hire them for $20 an hour, for $50 an hour, whatever it might be. They can build the whole site for you. They can just fix stuff for you. That's kind of up to you. Whew. Thank you for sticking this out with me. How many, holy cow, there's still 68 of you. No, that's questions answered. There's still 16 of you along for the ride. Thank you for your patience and sticking around. Let's answer some questions. Colleen says, is WordPress compatible with Constant Contact? Yep, there are plugins for it. Constant Contact is a way to collect email addresses, so you can send out newsletters. Another service like that I really like is MailChimp. And there's lots of different ways to integrate with those. Mary says, if you already have a domain and a site, can you use that same domain for a WordPress site? So do you have to take down the existing site first? Yes, more or less. You can, there are ways to essentially migrate the existing site to WordPress. You can also, some people will set up, you know, all of the new, like new hosting, and then we'll point only www.yourdomain to that new site, and build the site there and then switch the other one. But depending on how much traffic you're getting, if it's not a lot, then, assuming you can get the new website at least saying hello world within a day or two, just, yeah, take down the old site and put up the new one. Rachel says, what is Weebly? Weebly, I believe, is another page builder sort of service. Get started with our powerful free website builder. It looks like they have, with an emphasis on e-commerce. So it sounds like it's another product, kind of like Shopify. What are the other ones I mentioned? Gumroad. So basically, like, it's a service where, you'll point your domain at them, and they have instructions on how to do that, and they maintain, your whole website experience. And it's, I don't know about Weebly, but this is also a great option, especially for e-commerce, because they're gonna take care of credit card handling and all that kind of stuff built in. But at some point, depending on how picky you are, you're not going to like the design, and it's going to be a pain to try to change the design and layout, or there's going to be extra functionality or features that you want that they're going to start charging you for. I think most of them take a fee for per item sold. That might not be true for Weebly. I don't know Weebly. But the point is it's often a great way to start. It's also a great option, especially if, like I've alluded to a couple of times, up front, you decide what's important to me is my pottery. I just need a way to sell it. Then keep it simple, sign up for one of these services, and let them sell it, or let them do the work, essentially. Rachel says, am I available for tech consultant? No, but I am happy to answer questions. So send me email. I will reply usually within a day or two. So I am not going to be your first line of support, but kind of like teaching this class, I'm part of my joy in life is empowering other people and giving away my knowledge. So I'm happy to continue doing that. I'm just going through the questions here. Is there a way to link WordPress website to a site like Etsy and have the inventory updated on both? So one of the neat products that I found the other day is Snipcart. Snipcart. I'm going to start closing some windows. Whoops. And take some notes or write this stuff down for you. So assuming you can still see my, let's do e-commerce. Shopify is kind of winning, but other ones are Snipcart. And I do like Gumroad, though I haven't had a lot of experience with them. But something like Snipcart, what I liked was what they recommend is you set up like shop.yourdomain.com, and then so you could maintain your whole website. So I could maintain CoreyMoss.com with WordPress, and then if I wanted to sell stuff, I could send them to shop.CoreyMoss.com, and shop.CoreyMoss.com would actually point to Snipcart, and they would control the whole shopping cart experience. I think that's something similar that you can do for with Weebly or with any of these products, or Etsy. You can basically send people over to your Etsy cart. The way that you maintain inventory, that I'm not sure. But again, if we go and we Google, let's say WordPress, Etsy integration, how to add Etsy store to your WordPress website. There you go. Start reading. I don't, some of this might be very technical. Some of these articles might say, here's a plugin that does it all. For each individual thing, like you'll just have to dig into it. Sylvie says, any suggestions for websites to get known? Marketing is a whole other ball of wax, kettle of fish. Yeah, the truth is, everything I walk you through, if you don't tell anybody about your website, still nobody's going to come to it. So, there's advertising, there's, guerrilla marketing, there's walking around with pieces of paper, taping paper on on telephone poles around Claremont. Marketing is a whole other thing. Once you get them to your website, that's where you can kind of control this experience. Marketing, it kind of depends on what you're marketing and who you're marketing it to. So there's no one good, easy answer. Rachel, you're welcome. Thank you. Colleen says, do you know if the CMS will be having other similar classes? How can we access the recorded class? I don't know about other classes. I might do more classes. I know that Brandon is trying to get more things set up. I would imagine stay on the newsletter, keep checking the website. We are keeping this Zoom account to do more of these. So presumably more people can do more classes online through this kind of webinar forum. And honestly, if any of you are interested or willing to teach something online, please do, because this is our community. Rachel asks, SEO, question mark. So SEO stands for search engine optimization, which is how Google finds you, right? By creating a website, again, if you don't tell anybody about it, nobody knows it's there, including Google. So the easy answer, of course, is Googling, submitting your website to Google or to search engines. The other thing is just starting to have link to it and have people link to it. So getting on Facebook and talking about it. Don't spam people. That's where you start to get in trouble or piss people off. But Google is aware of that traffic and actually weighs it higher than if you go and buy ads or something. So the more people organically talking about you, that's all called SEO. And that's where things like blogging comes in. The more good content you can put on your website, the higher Google will rank you. And so then the more organic traffic you'll get. I know I'm using a lot of buzzwords, but I'm trying to just give you the touch points and we can get into it another time. Sarah says, thank you. You're welcome. Nate says, time well spent. You're welcome. Thank you for saying thank you. I'm glad you got a lot out of it. Nancy says, is setting up a drop-down menu difficult, as in to each item on your page? Some of that's built in. And again, it kind of depends on the theme you end up using. Some themes have that built in. And then again, there are plugins for it, or you end up, digging through a few different themes, and because different people are going to approach it differently. In your mind, you say, okay, at the top of my page, I want to drop down. Somebody else might just say, I just want a list of products. Don't get too caught up on exactly one type of functionality. Go look at a bunch of different websites, see how they solve it, and try them out. Anne says, thank you. I will be accessing the recording. Yeah, I know I said a lot. It's a ton to take in. Thank you for your time. And hopefully you got something out of this. And again, feel free to reach out to me with questions. I'm happy to help as best I can. Beth says, are keywords still used? Keywords, because they're so easy to game. I had a friend back in the 90s, had a website that was promoting alternative music, but he basically filled the keywords of the page with Britney Spears, who was the popular artist at the time. And so he actually got to the top #1 spot on a lot of search engines. If people typed in Britney Spears, they'd find his website. Well, pretty quickly, people got annoyed and search engines realized that they weren't doing their job very well. So they have de-emphasized it. So it doesn't hurt to add the appropriate keywords. The better way is to pack your content full of relevant words. So if you are a potter and you want to be known for your pottery, the best thing you could do would be to write lots of blog posts or lots of articles about potting and pottery techniques and kiln, temperatures and all that kind of stuff. I'd also recommend thinking about localizing it, right? So talking about pottery in Claremont, pottery in New Hampshire, that kind of thing, you know, will help people find you. Oops, I didn't say answer. But anyway, you're welcome, Sylvie. Thank you for sticking around. Colleen said my awful analogies are not so awful. I will try to do better next time. Usually I have a lot more dad jokes. Today, we just kind of got through it all. Candace said, thank you. You're welcome. Thank you for sticking around. Colleen says I took the fear out of her. I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, tech overwhelm, like I said, happens to all of us. This stuff is very overwhelming, especially since it's a black box, or I guess gray if you're using a Mac like I am. But, you know, Googling, doing some research, asking some questions, not being afraid. It's just, you know, it is just software. Technically, you know, we own the computers, not the other way around. You know, so if something breaks, we can uninstall it. We can try to fix it. You know, it's not the end of the world. I guess worst case, you can always go buy a new computer, throw this one out the window. Brenna says, thank you. Would you'd be interested in other classes? Do I ride motorcycles? Oh, that's funny because I rode scooters for years. And zipping around on vintage Vespas. That was kind of my thing. I haven't for a while, but moving up here, I really want to get a motorcycle. But if you're asking me if I can teach you how to ride a motorcycle via Zoom, I'm not so sure. Rachel says, good analogies. I'm glad to hear it. And then I took some of the fear away. Awesome. Oh, nice. Brenna has a 85 Honda. Sweet. Well, thank you all for your time. I'm going to sign off now. And again, reach out to me if you have any questions or contact Brendan, you know, to get in touch, look for more classes, and good luck. Good luck creating your first website. Thank you so much.